welcome back to another episode of Tips and Tricks with your favorite instructor Shelton. Today we have Mr. Roger Osorio with us today. And how are you doing, Roger?
I'm doing incredibly well. Excited to wrap up a great year. As crazy as it still was great.
Yes, and thank you so much for coming on. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so right now, earlier this year, I actually launched a new business called the School of Reinvention. And essentially what we're helping people to do is to learn the skill strategies and also work within the communities to their own communities of people who are looking to do the same thing, to reinvent themselves, basically define success on their terms, and then figure out what that reinvention needs to be so that I can go and get what I really want out of life, career, whatever it might be.
Wow, I love that. I absolutely love that. So, what is your tip or trick for us today?
Yeah, so my tip or trick actually comes from another job I have, which is at the University of Pennsylvania, and also little experience from teaching math at high school and middle school level. But the idea here is when everything got shifted to digital, I had to really start thinking, reimagining what I was doing.
Oh,
The curriculum, all of that, I was used to going in person, and obviously now I'm not. And the idea that worked out the best for me when I did that, and I'm already planning it for the next semester of courses I'm going to teach at Sarah Lawrence College and University of Pennsylvania,
oh,
is to come up for the session with a performance target or outcome. So
oh,
here's what I mean by this. So normally I would, the first few month or so of that switch to virtual, I was doing like my normal lesson. There might be a couple of activities, if anything, and then, we wrap things up, but the engagement was just not there. And it was like, my energy can be pretty high, but it doesn't come through on camera as much as it will when I'm in the room, moving
right.
around, going like weaving in and out of the rows and aisles and all of that. Can't do that virtually. And so I thought, you know what, I need to do this differently. This lessons, lecturing, blah, 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 it's just not going to work anymore. And so I thought, hey, let me see if I can come up with for the class some sort of performance objective. And what I mean by that is something that they all have to perform at the end of the thing. So that way, everything we do, well, it's going to be put to the test. Like, this is not, oh, you'll do this later or turn it in later, which means I could just kind of listen passively right now. It's like, no, I got to listen carefully because I'm going to be on the spot for a moment at the end, and they already know this. So it's not going to be like a surprise. Everyone's going to go ahead and do this. For my entrepreneurship class, I did this with their ventures. So they're taking a venture from concept to creation throughout the entire semester.
Oh, I love
And
that.
so, oh my God, so much fun to hear how their ideas evolve, by the way. But this was part of the inspiration for coming up with the performance objective that I decided on, which was I want them to pitch at the end of every single class.
Oh,
And normally this was actually a lot harder to do when we were in person, because in person, literally I have to have people lining up, like maybe I get 10 waiting, then they come up, they do their thing, then they go back and all of this. And it was a lot harder to do that actually when we were doing it online and all of that. And so, or I'm sorry, in person, because there was actually physical movement, and now I got to get people to sit. That just took too long. So what I did was I go, look, what we're going to do is we're going to today work on building a pitch for your problem that you're going to solve. What's the problem? So who's your customer, and what's the problem that they have, and what do they really want? Like, what does your customer really want to achieve?
right.
This is the market. We're going to talk about our market. Only market today, no solution. So we're going to focus on that. I take them through a series of exercises where we're going to do breakout rooms. And so we'll do here's the prompt. In this prompt, you are going to talk about your dream customer. I want you to identify your dream customer. Here's some attributes I want you to think about, and you're going to go into breakout rooms and do this. Now, the reason, like if the students need a reason, right, to really get moving
Plus,
on this and feel that urgency, it's that I'm about to go up there at the end, and on video, I'm going to get in front of the group and I'm going to deliver my 1-minute pitch. So
yeah.
I better be ready to say something. And here's my moment. This is like, we've got 10 minutes to cover in a group, like small group, 3 or 4 people. We're going to discuss this. So I'm also creating an opportunity to get feedback, because it always helps us if we can just hear what we're saying, but sometimes we don't want to do that in the whole class. And sometimes even when we're all together, it used to get really chaotic, because I
Oh,
would run similar types of activities, but we're in the same classroom. So they might huddle up, but it gets really loud. Some students have a harder time focusing, all of these things. Zoom actually gave me a way to fix that because I had the breakout rooms, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so quiet in their own breakout room.
Put them all over there.
Exactly. There's only 3 or 4 people, so they're not going to hear the noise from the other one, but they do get to come back and share out a little bit. So they still get the best of both worlds doing this. And so I just took the 1 minute pitch, broke it up into 3 prompts, and then did rounds. Each round, they would break up, address that one question, get the answer to that question, move on to the next prompt. And in between, I would give little lessons and examples. I might grab one student and say, so tell me, what was your dream customer? What did you come up with? And so somebody would say, well, here's what I have right now and all of that. I'm like, okay. And I use those examples for lessons. I go, here's how you can refine the customer. Here's how you can make the explanation a little more clear. And I know everyone else probably has similar kinds of challenges or issues with theirs. So they're all getting that lesson. So I know which ones to like spend time on. So I have that opportunity to still teach. It's just spread out and distributed now, because rather than just front loading it and doing like a solid 30 minutes of, I'm going to teach you how to do this full pitch for 1 minute. I'm going to go over every single part, boom, 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 item by item. Now I just get to break it up into rounds. So it did a few things. I broke up with the Sarah Lawrence College class, it was actually a 3-hour night class. So this wasn't the only activity we did, but we would do other things as well. But I got to break up the whole thing. We weren't just sitting there in front of a camera for a very long time. We got to break up. I took a more complex pitch, which was often a little scary to do. They were like, oh my gosh, what if I sound terrible for 1 minute? And I'm like, don't worry, I'm going to break it up into 3 small parts. If you can answer these 3 prompts working with a small group, you've got a pitch. You literally just have to piece it together in that same order, and it'll probably be no more than a minute anyway. So I would take them through each of those rounds, little lessons in between each of those rounds. And by the end of it, I then give time. I say, all right, we're going to take 10 minutes or 20 or whatever it might be. And it's usually a good opportunity for me in a 3-hour class, because next semester it won't be 3. But when it was, I was like, cool, this is a break too. So turn off your cameras, all of that kind of stuff, and you take a break, come in. But your mission right now is to consolidate all of the ideas, all of the feedback, and write your 1 minute pitch. And I was always super specific because, again, I wanted them to get to the finish line. So I told them you should have no more than 125 to 150 words, because that's usually that's about a minute's worth of speaking. And that's it. And then we're going to go through and we're going to hear everyone's pitches in the room. And so they would hear themselves. And the feedback that I often got, whether I was doing this, because I ran the same exercise at UPenn, but also at Sarah Lawrence College, was that I didn't think I could do that. And all of a sudden they were like, I just did this like in a virtual, like virtual is where they were a little surprised, because yeah. So it was just it was a really interesting thing to think about it in terms of that. I was finding it hard before this to just create a hook or something at the end that really engages you and forces you, because we all need that little bit of like I need that incentive to like, why am I going to work right now? Right. versus doing it later. Maybe I just listen passively now, kind of turn off my camera. Maybe I'm doing some things in my room while I'm listening to Mr. Osorio teach and blah, blah, blah. And I get that. Look, I would probably do the same thing. I used to work at IBM. I would do that on meetings when it was like just totally disconnected, not engaging. I'm like, I could do a few other things while I'm listening, because they didn't create any engaging components, and there was no hook at the end to really force me to like, all right, I gotta like put something to the test. So I realized that the performance part made it a lot more fun.
Yeah, you know what? I do it with faculty meetings sometimes. Unfortunately, it's so awful. When sometimes I'm in a meeting and I'm like, while they're talking, I could like check my emails, I can return peer phone calls, I can return peer emails, like I'm doing all this other stuff, and you're right, it's not engaging. And when it is engaging, I pay more attention. I absolutely can see how helpful this is, because I use the breakout rooms, but I don't think I use them in this way to make them effective. Like, I do this because this gives me so much stuff, and if it gives it to me, I'm sure it can help somebody else just to be more effective and to be able to say, okay, oh my goodness, these are how I can use breakout rooms, to do like prompts, and for them to have a guided question that's specific. I think that's excellence, because now they can be like, oh, okay, now I know I'm accountable for something. And that accountability is huge. It's absolutely huge, especially in an online environment, because I do have students who they're there when I call their name for roll, I can see them, but as I am lecturing or as I'm asking questions, the cameras start to disappear or someone turns into their ceiling fan or like the camera angle gets really weird. I had a student who put up like a can of WD-40 in front of the camera and I'm like staring at the can like what is going on? So but it was partly my fault because obviously it wasn't engaging enough to make them say, this is important, I should pay attention. And it didn't have the accountability factor that said, oh my goodness, at any moment she could ask me this question and I'm responsible for this. So I absolutely, oh my gosh, thank you so much, Roger. I really thank you for coming on. I thank you for being part of the show because this was super enriching. And just like me, I'm sure there are other people who are going to get so much from it. So I just want to say, take this moment to say thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that because that was a nugget that I absolutely needed and that I'm sure a lot of other educators need as well because that engagement portion is huge. It's absolutely
my pleasure. Yeah, and I think that the key to, because you're right, I love that you use the example of faculty meetings, because I think this could apply to a lot of things. And how do we create something where we all have a purpose here? And it's like, and it contributes, because
Yeah.
by the way, these performance objectives all roll up to the final objective of the course. So I make sure that there's a direct link. If that link is not there, then even that is still not a good enough hook. And so that's another thing to consider, which could really make it fun, because then you see how the course builds up. You're like, oh my gosh, every week I come to this thing, I'm actually getting part of my work done. And I literally almost have to cut and paste the whole thing together, like when it's all done and I have my final, like I did. And I always tell them that at the beginning. I'm like, you know what? This is always your opportunity. I always build it this way. I want it to break up to be pieces that you assemble later, but I need you to engage in each piece. So I'll give you a reason to engage in each piece. And the performance part is always a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I absolutely will have you back to say more. I want to keep the mini pod structure, so
I
I'm going
hear
to
that.
cut us right now, but I have to have you back because I have to know more about what you do and how you connect it to the end and how that's connected to the final, because I think that's so important. And I think other people, when they hear this, are going to be super interested in like how you do that and how you structure that. So if you don't mind, I would love to have you back. And I'm mind blown. Thank you so much.
No, my pleasure. I appreciate you giving me the platform to share some of these ideas. And I'm going to test the next round of this because, of course, we're always iterating, right? We're always making it better.
Yes.
And this coming semester, I'm going to be back at Sarah Lawrence. And now I have a slightly different format. Instead of 3 hours, I get 2 1.5-hour slots.
Nice.
I'm like, this is going to be so much fun. I've already started thinking of so many different things based on what I learned in last semester. So can't wait to share that as well as I start to get those results in.
Yay! Well, this has been another episode of Tips and Tricks with Instructor Shelton and Roger Osorio. See you guys later.